should have asked him that, but I always just think about it.
Dr. Yarnell, first personnel chair.
Right? Ready to go?
Dr. Yarnell?
You're ready to go?
Ready to
First
go?
personnel chair.
So I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the personnel meeting. And first is public comment. Comments and rules that Mrs. Cullen spoke of in terms of the curriculum meeting apply here too. So do we have public comment? I don't see that we've had anyone additional comment at that, other than board members. So no, not seeing any public comment. We'll move to the two items on the agenda for discussion. The first being the Director of Transportation job description. Mrs. McHale, can you summarize this for us? There are obviously some changes noted.
So as everyone's aware, Mr. Geiger has put in his letter of retirement, and he will be leaving us. Unfortunately, he did give us plenty of time to recruit for his position. So usually when we have someone leaving, we take a look at the job description and make any necessary changes. There's a few changes to this that we're recommending. Number 5, we're taking out Edulog and putting in just transportation software. In the event that they were to switch to another system, which they are actually in the process of doing now, I believe they've started training in the Versatrans system. So, and that could change down the road. So just to keep that generic, we've changed that. And then just a few word changes so that we're all in the same, we're all following the same pattern down, supervised. We added that in addition to review and approve the submission of all required state reports. And again, took out by Department of Secretary. They are mandated reports, they come from the state. I is just develop the budget and procure supplies, et cetera, et cetera. So again, just to define that this individual will be developing the transportation budget. And then the final piece is under terms of employment. As you may remember, in the last Act 93 contract agreement, we added in the Director of Transportation as one of the personnel under that agreement. So just to make sure that that aligns with Act 93 agreement, we've made that change as well. And that was pretty much it for that job description. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question in terms of the transportation software. Do we believe that someone who would apply for this job who has some experience, say it is an Edulog, is that helpful? Does it matter if they aren't in the particular area that we're working in?
Right, so I think that, most software, like in our department, our human resource information software, it's all kind of the same, but again, it has a different platform. But if you're familiar with one type of routing software or, transportation department software, you would be able to have a little bit of an edge over someone who's never touched it before.
I think another piece of good news, pending some surprises, there are 4 primary people who interact with that software, and so 3 of them will still be in the district.
Okay.
And so that is always good to be able to lean across the aisle and say, hey,
for sure.
can you show me how to do this type of thing if it is something that's important. I just wanted to speak to the fact that we've had it posted. We did post it as soon as we knew in December, just to kind of see what would happen, to give us plenty of time that if we needed to go back out. We had 7 applicants, and 5 of them, I would say, actually met our qualifications. 2 of them, I think, were people who apply for a lot of jobs and perhaps did not read the job qualifications.
Oh, dear.
But, that's right. So I was actually pretty happy because it is a pretty small group within transportation. For directors of transportation, they are generally one-offs, and then if it's outsourced, right, that's another situation.
Right.
So there are not a lot of bodies that are doing this job within a 50-mile radius. So I was happy when we had 5 what I would consider real candidates. We have narrowed it down to 3 to bring in for first rounds. We prioritized that we thought 3 were stronger. And so we have set up that by the end of the month, we will at least have had a first round of these 3. So whether the successful candidate, we know there will be a minimum of 2 rounds from that standpoint. And so we'll see how the first round goes. We may say no, we're going to go back out there and see what happens. But I'm very happy with the progress in terms of how early it is, so that if we get somebody in place to be able to get trained before Mr. Geiger gets out of here before the end of the school year, I think would be really, really helpful. So we are making progress, and that we'll have an update sometime in February in terms of where we are with next steps.
So you're still leaving it posted though?
We are, yes, yeah.
What,
But
do you
the-
have an end
well, I
date?
think the first date did end.
First
Yeah, it's not
Did end.
posted, I just looked.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So the first date
Hold on.
ended.
I wanted to
And
know
so
if
we're
it was
gonna do the
still
first round
posted.
interviews, see how we feel about the
gonna
candidates
apply?
we have there, as whether we need to open up again.
I wear a lot of hats.
See how it goes.
So yeah, so that, it is a unique group, so that's excellent news that we had 7 individuals apply, and as you said, 5 that had transportation experience.
Right,
So that's
yeah, definitely.
phenomenal.
I was happy.
Okay, are board members accepting of putting this on the agenda for next Tuesday night?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and it'll appear on that agenda. The second item is the consideration of putting teaching assistants in the building-based substitutes. Mrs. McHale, do you want
So you
to
may
explain this
recall,
issue?
Approximately 4 years ago, I came to you and asked for teacher building-based substitutes. And at that time, we were just sort of doing a trial with 3 in the elementary, 1 at the high school, 1 to float within the middle schools. And it worked out so well, it helped our fill rates, and they're to be used mainly when school has already started and you can't fill that position. There's no chance that you're going to get someone now to come in because the class has already started. So then I came to you 2 years later and asked if you would increase the number of building-based substitutes to, I honestly don't recall what it was, I think 5 elementary, 1 for each middle school and 2 at the high school. And then we increased it to a full complement at the elementary, so each elementary has their own building-based sub, each middle school and the high school has 3. And this year, we are fortunate to have all of those positions filled. We've pulled from those positions to fill long-term substitute in areas. The principals have an opportunity to observe these folks on a day-to-day basis so that when something opens up, short-term, long-term, they can pull these building-based substitutes and then we backfill that. So it's worked out tremendously for the teachers. So we're kind of asking to start the process again with teacher associates and personal care assistants. The fill rates have been low. There's several reasons for that. It's not our staff just calling out for sick and personal time. A lot of it has to do with folks that resign again at the beginning of the school year. Maybe they're into it a couple weeks and they said, not for me, or I have something else. So then we're left trying to, post-recruit and hire that person. In the meantime, we have this extra coverage that needs to be filled. So we're sourcing out per diem TAs and PCAs. And, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But if they're left unfilled, we're now in a non-compliance situation with an IEP and pupil services calling up and saying, hey, this is serious. We need these filled. So what we're hoping to do is start again the process small. We would like to ask for 2 of the teaching assistants at the high school because their numbers warrant that, and then 2 to float among the elementary. The elementary does not seem to have as big of an unfilled rate as the high school and the middle schools, and then 1 to float amongst the middle schools. So it would be 5 we would start with.
So how many would we have total?
We would have 5 total, 1 for the middle school.
I thought you just said we added some last year and the year before.
I'm sorry, those
Not
were the
this
teachers.
teacher. This is teaching
These are
assistants.
not teachers.
These are teaching
And personal care
assistants
So
and
these,
personal
so we
care
have the
assistants.
substitute teachers per building, and then we have the teaching assistants that'll float. Is that what you're saying?
We already have the building-based substitutes teachers in every single building now,
Okay.
and 3 at the high school, so they report there every day. We're asking for kind of the same thing with teacher assistants, but not 1 for every building. The numbers just don't warrant 1 at every elementary school every single day. So we're looking for 2 that can float where the need is, where the need exists.
And there are currently no building-based substitutes for the support staff.
Correct, there are none.
These would be the first 5 within the district.
Right, and we would be the 3rd school to try this.
So can they fill, and so these people would not be able to fill in for a teacher who's out, they'd only be able to fill in for a support staff person who's out?
Correct.
And is that because they would have, their qualifications are not the same?
It could be.
Because I know a lot of times the teaching assistants are also certified teachers.
They are, but it would be what they sign up for with Source for Teachers, ESS. A lot of people that have teaching certifications don't necessarily want to be in the classroom. I take my assistant Nicole, our benefits specialist, she has a teaching certification. She doesn't want to be in the classroom at this time in her life, so, you know, she's working for Human Resources. And you'll find that with folks that work for Source for Teachers, if they are a teacher substitute and we try putting them into a teaching assistant position, that they're like, I didn't sign up for that. And then it goes the other way too. If you're a teaching assistant, you're a support staff person, they may hold a teaching certification, but they don't want that classroom responsibility. Or for whatever reason, this is what they want to do. They want to support the teacher. So we're willing to have them. For them to guarantee their time to Pennridge, we would like to offer them an additional $5 per day. Right now, our teaching assistants are paid $85 per diem. We would like to offer the incentive of $90 per diem, which is more than the other two districts doing that, but less than the IU. So we feel we're in a good place. We're kind of in the middle with that. If we were to be successful in recruiting these 5 individuals, again, through Source for Teachers, we would be looking at, I think my number was, if we could fill the position for the remainder of the year, student days only, it would be an additional $2,225.
So, some other districts that I've worked in have had setups where they stagger the math classes throughout the day and they stagger the reading and writing classes throughout the day. And then they have a building sub, and that sub is scheduled to basically float from classroom to classroom and push in for, you know, a given period of time to help with remediation, enrichment, you know, when they're given formative assessment and they can split the kids up, or for reading groups. And there's a set schedule, so the teachers have an expectation that if there isn't someone out and that person's not being utilized, obviously that person gets pulled if someone's out.
Right.
But on the days that nobody's out, those extra hands really can come in and help support every one of the classrooms. And I'm wondering, do we have something set up like that? I remember having this discussion when we talked about hiring the building subs, and I think we were supposed to get some kind of a plan on how that was going to be laid out and how they're going to be utilized when we don't have people out. And I don't remember seeing what that was, and so I don't know, you know, I don't know if I just don't remember or if it never came back to us, but I'm just curious what that's going to look like, because now we'll have potentially 2 people in a building. Can we utilize them during that time to help provide those needs that we aren't, you know, that we can't?
I kind of have that
Right,
same,
now.
same question. I think it's really easy too when you have one sub that, like, you have for the teachers, that they're one person they stay in that building that whole day. And it'll be good for the high school if they've got 2 of them in that building, but that if there's ones that float between the 7 elementary buildings, that would be hard for, I think, for them to have a set.
It'd have to be like a day of the
Schedule.
week or something.
Yeah, but I think
That's-
it would be like
difficult.
ineffective, because if, I don't know, I see that, you know, the teachers would be, it would be so infrequent that they would be able to follow that schedule, that I think the teachers wouldn't even be able to really prepare or depend on that extra body there on a regular basis.
And when we looked at the data, the spring is always worse than the fall in terms of failed to fills. And we came up with 5 because the average currently is 4.6 days. And if you get rid of September, it's 5.1 days already that we have support staff out, and it's generally 2 to 2.5 at the high school. And then the other 3 are spread between middle school and elementary, which is why we came up with what we did. So we are expecting that generally, there have been 3 days since November 1st, where at the elementary level, one of these people would have been free. And so that means if you take this, so there have been 3 days in those 2 months of school, plus the first week and a half of January, where one of them would have been free. It never would have been a situation where 2. And so I agree with you. I don't think they will have a regular schedule. I think there will be a home-based building, and we'll probably do that by size. so that if there is a chance that somebody is not filled, then they'll have a place that they report if they're not assigned someplace. I think it will be pretty rare. As opposed to the teachers, all of the building subs do in fact have a Plan A schedule. That if they are not, often they're sent to another building because somebody might have two that's out, and so they go from north to south. But if not, they do have a schedule, and it is generally support in terms of classroom. And some of it has to do with what their speciality is. If they're a math teacher, there's probably different support than if they're an ELA teacher in terms of how the building utilizes them from that standpoint. So there is that schedule. I don't know what was promised or what was presented to you, but
So is there a
they do have
consistent-
that for the teachers.
Is there a consistent plan where all of the buildings are utilizing the building sub in the same way? So that all the
Currently,
teachers are
no.
getting the same benefit?
Currently, the principals are making that determination with their teachers in terms of where those needs are.
Yeah, I don't think you
So,
can keep it consistent
but-
between all the buildings. I think it would have to be building specific
Well,
based off of what their.
The whole point to me is we have a problem with fill rate in both sets of
Right.
positions.
Yeah.
So
Right. Again, it is,
you're not gonna have a lot of availability,
Yeah.
at
I
least
mean, I think
as
some
I
positions
understand these
will,
statistics.
Because the building sub positions, you would, I mean, you're still filling those sub positions, so you're not, I mean, are we that regularly using?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what he says,
Yes.
yes.
well,
thought you
the
said with the
number I gave
assistants.
you was with support. With
Yeah,
support.
but
I
I'm
didn't pull
talking
that
about
number for the building subs.
Those building
But-
subs are still being utilized in their Plan A position a good
We
amount of
still
time.
routinely have failed to fill spots every day
Right.
across the district. Now, sometimes they're half days and so somebody doesn't go and, those types of things. But we more often than not still have not enough subs to cover what we have. And some of that is not enough subs to cover, right? There are fewer subs available and there are more days that are required of subs in terms of teachers being out. Those two things are a bad mix currently across the county. Pennridge also, but across the county, that's true. This all started because we sat with Source for Teachers. I had a meeting in November just to kind of get a sense for our personnel and to see what our numbers were. And so the numbers actually for support staff jumped off the page, but we learned that some of that was positions that had not been filled. And so they were counting as failed to fill vacancies, but they really were vacancies. And I see that as differently than a sub not picking up a job. And so that's why, because originally I said, well, I'm going to recommend one to every building because it was worse than teachers in terms of the numbers. But it really was vacancies, and now that those vacancies are full, those numbers are a little more reasonable, which is why we're coming
And you'll
with
see
the
some of
5.
those coming to you for approval in January.
Right,
We'll fill
and
some of those TA positions.
it really is to see, see whether this model works. Source for Teachers does
Right.
think that for the guarantee that you're driving the same direction every day, and for those people who, now there are some subs who don't want to work 5 days a week.
I was gonna say, these are
And so
optional
those people-
positions,
exactly right. So-
So if I'm one of those people and I decide to go to Boston, as I have decided this week, I would turn down that job, no matter how many people or districts offered it to me.
Right. Generally, the people who sign up for these are the people who want to work every day and want to work in one place. They want to, either they're local, because they live here, and so they want to do
Right.
that, and I think the high school jobs will fill first, because they are at the same building every day. The middle school and elementary school, there isn't going to be that guarantee. You're still going to be within 20 miles, but you're not going to be at the same place. But
And you have some folks that maybe want to get into Pennridge as well. They would like-
And with
they
the
would like
number
to
of
eventually
failed to
work
fills,
for
the
us.
$2,200 that we're talking about is going to be available within the sub-budget. This will not be beyond our current sub-budget, because we unfortunately save money in our sub-budget because we don't get
Right.
subs every day. And so when we save them at $90 a day, we get to that 2,200. So this will not be an increase to the sub-budget. We're just hoping that it will decrease the failed to fills and give us some reliable people within the district.
And these people will be hiring directly, not through Source for Teachers, right?
They would be hired through Source for Teachers.
Yeah.
So we're
But we pay
letting,
them.
so these constant people, are we picking, we're not picking them?
We have the option to interview if we would like, yes,
That was my
always.
question.
So if we're interviewing anyway, what's the benefit of sending them through Source for Teachers? Because they're taking 30%, which is what we're spending if we pay for their benefits and stuff directly.
They will manage it, they'll recruit, they'll hire them, and again, you don't have the benefits attached, you don't have the pieces attached.
Right, but their fee cancels out the benefits and PSERS, right? It breaks even? And
No,
so,
it's still,
I
it's
guess
still.
my concern is if
I
we're
would have
gonna
to
be
actually run the
hiring.
numbers, but it's still better to, it was more cost effective going through them.
I guess I thought from the last time we had this discussion that it was like a wash, but, you know, it would then take more time on the administration's part as opposed to them doing, you know, the work for
Running
it.
the system, right.
And we wouldn't currently be
Quality
talking about
exception.
benefit positions simply because of the number of days that are left and the number of hours? Is that true?
I would have to run the numbers and
Okay.
see how that works
Right.
out with ACA,
Yeah.
honestly,
It-
it's a look-back period and all of
Okay.
that. It's generally 30 hours a
But
week.
that was my question is, like, will they be a higher quality sub? Like, can we vet them? Would we interview them? If they're gonna be in our school every day, that would be something.
So we do that for the substitute, the building-based substitute teacher subs. The principals do want to interview those individuals because, as you said, they're coming into their building every day. And we certainly have that option as well to do that with the teaching assistants.
As well
I
as
think our-
source, sorry?
I think our biggest hurdle right now is going to be to attract individuals to come and do this. You know, again, the lower the unemployment, the harder it is to fill positions like this.
Well, and maybe can you explain this to me, because maybe I'm misunderstanding, but if they are hired through Source for Teachers, they don't get benefits, and
Not for us.
we're the Peasers, so that 30% goes to Source for Teachers. But if they're hired directly through us, instead of that 30% going to Source for Teachers, that 30% goes to the employee, and now they get Peasers and benefits. So if I'm looking at both positions, and I would prefer to be hired through the school district, because now that 30% is going to me as an employee rather than going to a middleman, just simply for giving us their name. And if we're going to interview them anyway based on quality, don't you think we would attract better people if those people are getting the added benefits as opposed to us just giving it to some middleman? Who, by the way, I've raised this concern for a long time, I don't think that the quality of people that we get through Source for Teachers, in my opinion, they take anyone with a pulse who can meet the recommendations and send in the forms. And I think that we as a school district have a higher standard than that. And especially if we're going to be hiring full-time positions, that I think that we would attract a better quality. And if we're going to do the work anyway with the interviews, why give them the 30%? So that's my perspective.
So I want to address the point of the quality. You're aware, you know, that the state allows you to hire teacher substitutes with a bachelor's degree as long as they have an emergency certification.
For 1
So-
year.
For
They can
1
only
year.
use their
It's 1 year at a
emergency cert
time,
for 1
right?
year.
It expires and you have to renew each year with a fee.
Yeah.
So, Source for Teacher substitutes are run through the IU guest teacher program. We had some issues last year. I'm sure that, you know, that's what you're talking about. Some of the folks that came through, there were issues. We wrote up incident reports. As a group, the HR advisors had asked them to follow up on the incident reports, a little more rigorous than they did in the past. So we instituted that. In addition to that, they have taken a hard look at the guest teacher program and what is contained within that. So when there is an incident and someone maybe uses obscene language, we will then send that request to the IU so that that's incorporated into their guest teaching program. I've personally viewed some of the slides that they go through. They've expanded it in hours and content. I feel they're doing a really good job. It's just I don't think you can control every single person and their actions.
Unless you're hiring them yourself.
Right.
And then
Well, you
can-
still can't
Again, I
control
mean,
them.
everybody-
Think
you
of
know,
the
I
personal
know that they can
instances
control
that we
everyone.
Yeah, I mean, people
I
that
get
are,
what you're
we
saying.
cannot
Right,
control a
in-
human.
Right now, you're talking about how it's difficult right now to find subs, right? And I think, and I know, you know, people may disagree with me, Souderton has a much easier time finding subs because they hire them directly, they give them bonuses if they work there. For every 15 days, they get a bonus day of pay. And if they do work over the, you know, they get more money, and they get more money, and their buildings are air conditioned. So if I'm on the web, you know, ASOP or whatever, and I'm looking for a job, and I see this one, that's the one I'm taking. And so when you look at what our fill rate is, I'm filling those before I fill these, and that's, you know, these subs see them all. They see them all, and they get to handpick which one of the 30 options they choose. And if I'm looking for a teaching assistant job because I want that stability in a single building, and I see it posted in all these different school districts, but Pennridge is hiring me directly, so I'm a Pennridge employee, and I'm getting the benefits and I'm getting the PSERs, I'd rather work for Pennridge rather than taking a 30% cut so that the middleman can get it over at a different school district. And so we're going to attract better people and we're going to keep them because we're giving them a better deal than most of these other districts that are hiring through Source for Teachers. I get your point about the day-to-day subs, right, and the insurance thing, and you never know if they're going to go over 5 days a week, or over the 40 hours a week or whatever, and so it's a nightmare to try to figure that out, right?
is a
But this is a full-time employee, so we already know that this person, so you're saying the 30%, you don't know whether you would have to pay it or not in the other situation because for the benefits and the insurance. This time you know you're in that situation because it's a full-time employee. So they would
back up though, they're not a full-time employee if they're hired by Source for Teachers.
right,
They're a
but then 30,
substitute.
right, exactly. So
If we
Source for
bring them
Teachers is
on-
now getting that 30% cut off the top instead of the employee. But if we hire that full-time employee
understand.
here, it's gonna cost us the same amount of money. It's just that we're paying them better instead of giving Source for Teachers the cut.
And I think if we would hire them ourselves, we would get a better quality candidate. Could we just see a price breakdown of what it would cost us going through Source for Teachers or having them hired as full-time Pennridge employees with their PSERs,
We can.
outlooks?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's send out a cost comparison, right? We can do that by the end of the week so that people have time to review it before we bring it back.
Pennridge, right?
Yeah,
With
but
it.
you had,
So,
one point though,
if
you kept,
we-
I'm
If
sorry.
we do hire them, now, they are hired. You have to understand, if we're gonna hire somebody as a substitute and we decide, you know what, this is not working, you know what, Source for Teachers, we're done. You know, we really don't want these 5 building-based substitutes anymore. If we hire them, they're ours.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
can
we
just
can-
make it
They're
a
ours.
long-term sub, day-to-day substitute
And that-
position for a year.
That will only go so far before you're encouraged to make them a hired full-time employee, paying union dues, on the books.
Yeah, but isn't there clauses?
If you have a
in agreements
permanent
about
position that you're
referral
opening up
positions?
and you're giving it to someone, they're going to have union property rights. And then they're going to be.
If these
your
were
employer.
hires, they would be under the support staff contract, I
They
presume.
would.
So
And
they
then
would
they
have
would be
to follow
entitled,
those rules and regulations.
they would be considered a full-time employee.
But you couldn't word the job description as a long-term sub, daily substitute? Because I was a long-term sub and every year I had to reapply for new, I knew that I only had my position, there was no
Right. It was
guarantee
a
that there'd be a
1 year.
position for me the following year. So it could just be, it's a one-year
Yeah.
thing and then you've gotta re-interview for the following year, They might move up, they might find a different position within the district. But I mean, that would be a little loophole so that you don't have to guarantee to give them employment year after year.
And of course, we'd have to, look
And
into
that's
our
exactly-
contract as well with ESS and see how
We're allowed.
what kind of lines we're crossing there as well.
Okay,
We're
well, let's
calling
do
them
that.
Substitutes.
We'll- right.
So we'll
We'll
take
do
a
that
look
and
at
and come back with a recommendation in time for next Tuesday. Okay?
Okay.
Well, does it need to be Tuesday, or is it going to be the next personnel committee?
Well, if we feel as though we get cost comparisons and we can say, hey, here's what we're gonna do Tuesday, and it
Okay.
fits this conversation, the board then can decide as to whether, let's dig into this a little more. But we might be able to come up with a solution that we're like, you know what, this is gonna work for the rest of the year, and, whatever.
So you-
And then
We will bring it Tuesday if you can.
If we can, exactly right. We'll try to get something out
Yeah,
this
I'll
week
try to
in
get
terms
it
of
up mail
numbers and
or
see.
email, so you can look at it before Tuesday.
Okay.
Maybe this week.
And TAs are only
So are there
guaranteed
other
their
questions,
slots.
comments about this proposal and what's done next? Not, I guess we'll hear from the
Okay, yeah.
administration
We'll send
on
something
this
out this
regard.
week. Yep.
I'll email out the information.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's the last agenda item, and the next personnel committee is scheduled for February 4th, presumably in this room. Public comment? Mrs. Furlong? No? And the meeting, and the evening is adjourned.